23 years old. My parents ended up dying in a car accident. Just being a young man, not having a lot of good influence, I fell into drugs and alcohol. And I saw a guy totally transform at the gym, asked him what he was doing. He said, a bodybuilding show. And I said, I want to do that.
Today's guest is an IFBB Pro Bodybuilder, 7-figure direct sales leader, and a man who has personally helped develop over 30 6-figure earners on his sales teams alone. He is now partnered with Make Wellness, where he broke every direct sales record within his first 3 months at the company. He's obsessed with helping others achieve financial freedom, and he shows up every single day to prove it.
There's a reason why our country and our world is in shambles right now. Families are struggling and there's more divorce than ever. It's because there's not enough leadership within the homes. What we saw in that first company was usually it was the wife that actually had the idea or she wanted, to do it. And then when she started making money, the husband comes in and says, okay, I can get behind this. What it did is it started to create this dynamic that began to spread. And there was thousands and thousands and thousands of families that were leading together. 20% of the millionaires out there were made in the direct sales channel. Wow. Okay, so that's a lot. However, direct sales also has a lot of ick factors to it. Let's make something different. Let's make something that's relevant today. What if we could bring it to the masses? Then you have the opportunity to build wealth.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Mentors Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Martin. Nathan, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Good to be here, my friend.
It is good to have you, and the guns are in full view. I'm going to put mine away because I thought I was looking good till I saw you.
Get a better angle, right?
Yeah. Where are you located?
We just relocated to Arizona, so we're just about 20 minutes north of Scottsdale.
Beautiful, beautiful weather, beautiful place, with the exception of the summers out there. That's when the desert temperatures kick in. Tell us a little bit about how you got started, because I know it wasn't always smooth sailing. It always wasn't, 7-figure sales teams. This has been a grind for you from what I know. So tell our audience a little bit about how you got started in the space.
Yeah, well, I'll take it way back and kind of dating myself, but, I started in the health industry back in '99, started as a sports massage therapist and was really excited to work with professional teams and found out it's more who you know than what you know. And so I dabbled in that space for a little while, but ended up going back to school through American College of Sports Medicine, getting my personal training degree and really starting my journey from there. And unfortunately, during that time, I was 23 years old. My parents ended up dying in a car accident. And just being a young man, not having a lot of good influence, I fell into drugs and alcohol. And that was my story for a minute. And so luckily, I saw a guy totally transform at the gym, asked him what he was doing. He said, a bodybuilding show. And I said, I want to do that. And so that kind of propelled me, and back before there was social media and that kind of following, it kind of created a following in that area, in the Seattle area that I grew up in. And so I fast forward, opened up first a Max Muscle supplement store, had a private studio in the back, and then outgrew that in a couple of years, opened up a full-size gym and was doing very, very well. It was a boutique style gym, but had all the bodybuilding equipment. So I attracted a lot of professional athletes, a lot of national level competitors, that type of thing. And so was doing really, really well until the crash happened 2008, 2009. And back then you couldn't just Google how to market your company. You had to have good people around you, and I didn't. And so that's kind of really where my direct sales story started, because my future wife had walked into my gym, and just being a pro athlete and a gym owner and a trainer, you're constantly pitched things all the time. And so when she first walked in, to be honest, I totally pushed it away. I was just too good for it. And so I watched her, and her own story, she was in a very abusive relationship, walked out of a relationship with 2 bloody ears. And 2 kids, a 1 and a 3-year-old. And was starting her life over at the age of 28. So at the time, she was cocktail waitressing at night, personal training during the day, and building a direct sales business. And so I could respect the grind, but again, it wasn't for me. And so I really watched her for a couple years and her story, she went on to become the first single mom to get to the top level of that company. She was making about 40 grand a month. Wow. It just forced me to take a look at what she was doing, because behind the scenes, I was struggling to the point where one month I had to have the electricity off at home so I could pay the rent for the gym. And so I was just in a bad place. But again, it's funny how sometimes that ego, it doesn't want to let anybody know that you're struggling. And that's kind of where I was.
Yeah, I know that ego all too well, my friend. And it's not something that we completely shed ourselves from. As men, as high achievers, we often hold on to the false belief that we can do it all on our own, or we'll figure it out at some point. So, I mean, you have this tragedy in losing your parents early, and then you find the gym. At what point did the gym stop being just therapy and start being a career?
Well, it probably took, I've always been very driven. So, as soon as I knew I wanted to be a personal trainer, they kind of worked hand in hand. What the gym was for me was it was an escape. And the truth was, I built something that was very impressive on the outside, but I hadn't dealt with what was going on the inside. And so when my wife, or future wife at the time, when I finally bought into what she was doing and said, show me that culture, what really attracted me, it wasn't the money. The money was that first thing that hooked me, but it was the people and how, it was a company called Advocare. And primarily it was made up of teachers, coaches, and pastors. And I had never been a part of something where people just poured into you, not necessarily making anything off of you. Right. And the good and the bad about the health industry and the fitness industry is you have to be on your toes, because everybody's constantly trying to get to the top. Yeah. But in that industry, for the most part, you cut others down in order to build yourself up, right? And this was very different. And so it became like a family to me. And I already knew, because of bodybuilding and because of personal training, that I could grind. I knew I could do that. But if I could put it into something else where it was more about building others up versus just fighting for myself, now all of a sudden I was in it with a bunch of people, and that starts to compound. And so it's not just about your own personal efforts, it's about how you help other people win. And because of that, you start to win.
How did competing in bodybuilding space and being a fitness trainer, how did that athletic background kind of shape the way you do business?
Well, again, going back to the grind, the amazing teacher that the gym is for somebody is that you got to come in the first day and you got to do the work and you don't see any results. And then you come in for a week and you don't see results. And then you come in for a couple weeks and you start to see a little bit something, but it's mostly mental. It's preparing yourself for a bigger vision. And really, I think what bodybuilding taught me was every year I had two things. I had somebody that I wanted to beat, somebody that I was competing against silently that they didn't know I was competing against them. And then the other thing was I had a vision of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to look like. And so you pair those two things together and you see past the hurdles that are in front of you. And I think it's a great analogy for life and for business is the people that struggle in business, and especially in my lane, in direct sales, are the ones that they almost look at it like a lotto ticket. Like if I get lucky right away or I see results right away, then I'm in it. But if I'm not, right, what happens is we all have hurdles in life. We all have things that happen. Well, in business, it's every single day that you're trying to tackle those things. And if you can't see the vision that's further out, then you end up turning around, right? Because it becomes a wall.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And I've had the same experience, and I share it with my audience all the time, which is for anybody who's looking for something to start building confidence, the gym is the easiest way to do it. And it's really the way that most people should approach it. It's like if you're sedentary, you're on a couch, just walk. Just walk a little bit every day, and then you'll get to the point you can run. But people just want to run. And in today's society, always, but in today's society, even more now than ever, people are seeing the wins, people are seeing the outcomes, and they're not seeing the gap in between that. And that's why I love the fact that you pointed to vision, because physiques, you have to create the vision that you have for your body. And even the Ronnie Colemans of the world, even the Jay Cutlers, you see them when they're young and they're massive guys. But in order to get to that physique, it takes time, years, rep after rep. And then you also mentioned the mental component, which is that the last few reps of a set, that conversation in your head is literally not to give up.
Yeah.
The last 2 to 3 reps are not to give up. Like, shit is getting hard, and then those last 2 is like, you got this, and then the last one is almost like an anger. Like, there's no way you're gonna beat me. I'm gonna get this rep out. So what are some of the things that you would tell somebody who's feeling hopeless, who's maybe got ideas for what they wanna do, but they just don't know how to get started, whether it be in life, in sales, or in fitness?
Yeah. Well, I think, like Simon Sinek talks about this a ton, and, is the why behind it. And so I think so many times people get caught up in our business. Our business is constantly changing and constantly evolving. There's new technology. And so you're always coming up with new onboardings. But that's not the most important part. The most important part is like the why behind it. Like, what is going to keep you moving? Because the clearer you can get on your why of why you're doing something, emotionally, that's what pulls you through. And then you figure out the how, right? And then you find the who. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is most of us, we start out as kids as being dreamers, and we're told we can do anything. And then all of a sudden you get to high school and you start to do sports and that kind of stuff. And then you get kind of pushed aside sometimes, and some people rise up, but then you get to a place where they're told that you shouldn't expect as a society. And so I think as adults, especially as young adults, what we do is we start to lose that ability to dream and to create clarity on the dream. And I think that's the most important part is if you can spend the time. And I fell victim to this, is where, you're grinding, and then all of a sudden you get worn out because you don't spend the time to stop for a minute and slow down and say, okay, what am I truly going after? What does that look like? What does it feel like? What does that do for me? What does that do for the people around me? You start to create a bag of why you're doing these things. And then all of a sudden you start to accomplish them because you're also rewiring your brain. Because your brain is actually wired to either keep you away from things or drive you towards them. And so if you create clarity on the things that you want, your brain will try to prove you right. If you don't create the clarity, what happens is your brain will actually try to tour you around those things so that you don't get hurt. And so that's one of the things you gotta understand subconsciously. We're subconsciously doing about 90% of what's going on in our brain is not us actively doing that. So we got to step back and create those clarities so that we are pushing our subconscious more towards that.
Yeah, it's almost like breathing. It's just going on in the background without any knowing that it's going on. It's just automatic. And unfortunately, 90% of those thoughts are negative, or 90 some odd, closer to 100 than it is to 90. And, that's where most people get lost, is not having that clarity. So I haven't heard it explained that way, and I thought that was beautiful. But I wanted to go back to the childhood dreaming. As a parent of young kids, I even catch myself doing it, where we're reprimanding them, and a goal is to not stomp on their dreams. Obviously, they're very young and playful. As they get older, they'll start to dream about what they may want to be in life. And it's oftentimes the people that care for us the most that stamp on those dreams, that stamp them down to have a plan B, be realistic. Oh, you're not athletic, so I don't know about that. Famous scene is in The Pursuit of Happiness. Will Smith, where he's playing basketball with his son on the rooftop, and if you're like your old man, you're not going to be that athletic. So, and then he caught himself, and he told him, don't ever let anybody, step on your dreams. And that brings me to a study that I read about, and I don't remember the age, but it basically stated that all children up to a very young age, 5 or 6, something like that, they're actually genius level, because genius implies the ability for one to solve a problem creatively. And children, more than any other, age group, are able to do this because they don't have anything holding them down or putting them in a framework. Well, that's not going to work. So they try to problem solve in a genius way. And then as they became 7 and 9, those numbers start to tank to the point where they just stopped testing for genius after like 17 years old, because the number just fell off a cliff. And what are some of the things you've done, Wavy, with your kids and your wife has done as dreamers yourselves to protect those dreams, protect your child's ability to dream? I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, I think it's tough as a parent because I think you're dealing with two different things. Number one is you want to make them earn things, and we all know that you grow, and just like when you're building muscle, you grow in the times of stress, right? And so you have to have a little bit of that. I studied a guy named Andy Andrews for a little while, and he talked about instead of raising good kids, it's raising good adults, giving them the ability to make decisions. Now, what I found is when you're actively doing something with your children is the best times to have those conversations because you can probe them with questions and it doesn't feel like you're cornering them. We all have that relationship with our kids where they're just like, Dad, come on. Like,
are you preaching again?
It doesn't matter who you are, right? And so a lot of times, some of my mentors will bring me in to talk to their kids because they're just like, they just don't listen the same as they listen to somebody else saying the exact same thing. And so one of the most important things I think I did with our son, two things. I used to actually bring him. So we would, as a family, would go to church, but I would bring him by ourselves when we were having a little bit of issues with him wanting attention any way he could get it. And so we would drive to church and I would just ask him questions and we would talk through it and I would ask him why and why he thought of that. And I would just probe him to get him thinking through the process and I could throw little chips at him as he went. Another great thing that I did, and I would suggest any of this to your father, especially if you have sons, is go build something. Go teach them how to build something. We're in this technology era where everything's on there, and one of the most, I think, life-changing experiences, two life-changing experiences with my son was we built a treehouse together. And I had never built a treehouse, right? But my dad was a carpenter, and we figured it out together. And we even had some fights, and sometimes where he walked away, but it was challenging, and it helped us to problem solve together, and that grew a bond that later on he could come to me when tough things happened, right? And so we did that. One other one that we did once he got older, once he got 23, is we trained for a competitive bodybuilding show together. He told me he wanted to do his first one. And I was going to come out of retirement and do my last one. Unfortunately, I got hurt, but we got a year and a half of building together before we were going to cut down for a show. And just the experience that you have when you're doing something together and you have that small talk, we take that for granted. If you can't sit around a kitchen table because life is too busy, go find something to do together where you guys can both build something. And it's one of the secret sauces, I think, to life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because they get to see the process in action and they get to learn and they get to bounce things off of their hero, their idol in most cases, which is their dad. I love the fact that you question him in a manner which is kind of turning the tables. If anybody's raised young kids, they go, but why? But the sky's blue, but why? but why? And it's something that we take for granted. So I always try to frame it like as raising young children is like I get to live my childhood again through their eyes as a responsible, loving adult, as opposed to, being on the other end of it. So we can flip anything on its head, that's for sure. But I wanted to dive into the business component because we're bringing Make Wellness, your company, on board as our official sponsor for the podcast moving forward. And I just wanted to share my audience, why we're bringing you guys on board, why we believe in the product so much. But I wanted to hear it from you because you've been in this industry for quite some time. You've found success with various different products in a very tough industry. So why Make Wellness? What made you say yes to this one?
Yeah. So we have great products and we can talk about that in a minute. But to be honest, it was when Justin Prince came to me, luckily we were really, really good friends. And so during the thought process of him ideating through this, he came to me prior to them starting it up. And he said, I want to build the next generation of leaders. And so to me, what that means, and I got this in our first company. So I've been a part of, this is my third company. The first company was amazing culture. And I got to kind of grow up in that, from the age of, I think it was 27 to 30 something or 40 something.
Yes, this guy has an advanced age audience. He doesn't look it, but he's actually older than me.
I'm almost 50. So.
God bless.
But one of the things I got to watch and experience was, it's great to say, to bring somebody on and say, hey, let me teach you how to do the business. But more importantly, when you start to create a community and a culture where you're doing life together and you're going on trips together and families are hanging out together, what you start to see is the next generation seeing how to minister to people and what true leadership is, and having those deep conversations and dinners together that, again, you just don't get. There's a reason why our country and our world is in shambles right now, and they don't know their identity, and families are struggling, and there's more divorce than ever. It's because there's not enough leadership within the homes. And so what we saw in that first company was, we saw that it was a husband and a wife that a lot of times were doing this together. Sometimes usually it was the wife that actually had the idea, or she wanted, to do it. And then when she started making money, the husband comes in and says, okay, I can get behind this. But
seeing is believing, unfortunately.
Yeah. But here's the truth is what it did is it started to create this dynamic that began to spread. And there was thousands and thousands and thousands of families that were leading together, right? And that next generation, now you watch them, because now they're all in their 20s and early 30s from that company that had grown up as kids, and they're all successful because they have a successful mindset. And going back to the beginning, it's actually not about who you are, it's about who you're becoming. And so that was the first thing Justin said, is he's like, I want to build something that creates the next generation of leaders. He went out and he grabbed 3 different CEOs that respectively had all done billion-dollar businesses and other direct sales companies. And they came together to say this, if you look at direct sales, 20% of the millionaires out there were made in the direct sales channel. Wow. Okay, so that's a lot. However, direct sales also has a lot of ick factors to it. The old system is what they call a self-consumption system. Like you're bringing in customers, but you're really trying to make them into distributors, and they don't want that. Right. And so what Justin was very good at is gathering people that had been very good in that industry and say, hey, let's make something different. Let's make something that's relevant today. And so we kind of have a hybrid of more of affiliate marketing and then direct sales on the backside, where you can team build and you can build that culture, but you can do one or the other, and you don't have to do both. And so that was the first thing that really grabbed my attention. The second thing was he called it. I mean, he's like, man, peptides right now are the thing. Everybody's talking about them. It's a buzzword. But what if we could bring it to the masses? Because right now, the truth is the majority of them, they're injectables, right? Yep. They have to be done very consistently. If you're doing them right, you should be getting blood work done. There's a lot to them to do it in a healthy and safe way. And they work really well. However, what if we could utilize science and we could bring it to the masses through orals that worked a little bit different, more like the body, a little bit more natural, and followed the circadian rhythm of the cell and of the body, so that you could take a product every day and we could turn it into something that people liked and enjoyed, like a drink. And so if we could do that, if we could capture that science, we could go out there and crush it. Because anytime you can take something that's successful for the high level athletes and those that have a lot of money and a lot of time, and you can bring that to the masses, well, then you have the opportunity to build wealth.
Yeah, and this is such a great product, and it's so convenient. And Justin's just a stand-up guy. From the first time we met, we hit it off. And then I got to fly out to St. George, and he was super gracious. I got to visit him at his house, and we both traded off podcasts and got to know each other even more so on this recent trip to Palm Beach, where I got to, ironically enough, John Maxwell was there. And talk about leadership, the GOAT. I call him the Tony Robbins of leadership. What a gracious human. And what was super cool, I asked him a question about God. And he didn't want to offend anybody in the room who wasn't Christian, because we know he's Christian. And he just politely asked his assistant to take my information down, and he said he'd be giving me a call. And I was like, sure, I'll see if I can make some time for you, John.
I got a really cool story about that. So I was a part of helping build a church for about 5 years. I was kind of part of their core 4. And so we would go to different church retreats and that kind of thing. And we went to a Chris Hodges one, and John Maxwell was the main speaker there. And so he sat down and he said, he's like, I used to be a pastor. He's like, all you pastors in here, he's like, you know what you do? He's like, you just rob from one church to the other. Like you take people that were already going to one church and you get them to go to the other. He said, the truth is 50% of the people out there will never walk into a church. And he said, so he actually gave up being a pastor and started writing leadership books because he said, I can take the principles from the Bible and I can go teach them and I can touch the rest of the people out there. I can impact those people. And those that want to talk about Jesus and want to talk about God, right? He did, just like you're saying, he's very respectful. So he'll get up on stage and he'll say, I've got 3 things that I want to share with you. Or he'll say, I got 4 things that I want to share with you. And he'll go through, the 3 if there's 4 of them. And then he'll leave out the last one. And then the crowd will be like, what about the 4th one? And he's like, you're not ready for that one yet. He's like, but for the people that are, he's like, I'll be waiting out in the hall. And he'll have a huge line out there. And the beautiful thing that he does is he creates curiosity and then he educates and he invites. Yeah. And so it's one of those things that like he does it at such an amazing level. And it's just been the couple times that I've really got to hang out with him and talk with him. He's a gem of a person.
Yeah, salt of the earth for sure. And I can't wait to get that phone call. And they were gracious enough to volunteer to lend me some information in pursuit of my own goal of impacting the lives of inner city youth through changing their money mindset. And they already have their leadership programs instituted all over the country and throughout the Americas, I believe, and the world. And when I talk about gracious and just pinch me moment, that was like a pinch me moment. And I just got so much value from him and his staff and Erin, who's his assistant. Just super gracious, not to mention, obviously as a messenger, he's just one of the highest level speakers we've had in our generation. So I can't wait to get on the phone with John Maxwell and talk about God and how I can get closer to him. Because to me, that truly is the secret to living. It's letting go. I come from a place of chaos. I come from a place where there's a false belief that you control the outcome. And to some extent, you can only control the work you put in. You can't control the outcome. But it's just a place of ignorance where we don't have the tools, we don't have the resources. So coming into this space later in life of self-development and coming across the paths of all these great leaders in such a short period of time in my own life has been nothing short of miraculous. And that was just one of those moments like, all right, I took the chance on myself, that aha moment. And to the audience members who want to take a chance on themselves, but they just don't know how, I often talk about having a side hustle. Everybody talks about security and having a job and benefits, and we're seeing just how fickle that belief system is. And AI is testing that to the fullest. How can somebody get involved with Make Wellness, let's say on a part-time basis? How does the program work? Let's talk more about that. And I want to dive into the products themselves as well, so we can share a little bit more about the audience and the benefits of the product.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 ways of really entering into it. One is, they're both through becoming an affiliate first. And so there's no cost to become an affiliate. What I always say is we don't want salespeople. We want people that have true, authentic experiences with their products. So, you want to be on the products and using the products. And so I think the first thing always is determining, number one, like what is the issue you're trying to solve, right? Because if you can figure out what the issue you're trying to solve for yourself, well, then that organically is going to transfer to the next person when you start to have conversations. And so it's not about like when you do a business like this, it's not about knocking on every single door and saying, here's what I want to present to you. It's truly about understanding what you have, asking questions, being curious. And then when there's a problem that you can solve, you connect them to the solution, right? And so that's what we start to teach through this business that actually starts to help you in all aspects of life. And so I love to pick it up as a kind of a side thing at the beginning and start to teach people these things because they can utilize it in real life. But then what happens a lot of times is all of a sudden they're making $500 or $1,000 and they're like, okay, that was pretty easy. Let me try to do some more. And so we pay on the affiliate side based off of how many customers you have. And it's a sliding scale that goes up to 40%. And so you can make up to 40% on the products that you're selling.
Wow.
And then on the team building side, and this is what's been pretty amazing. So you guys, not to toot our own horn, but we're one of 2 companies to ever do 100 million in sales in our first year as a startup company. And so people want what we have. However, what I've seen that I've not seen in the direct sales industry is we have massive amounts of medical professionals that are buying into this as well. we got a call right after this with somebody that they want to figure out, how do we implement this within our system? Because they're already using synthetics, and or sometimes they want the option, to use one or the other, or use them alongside of them. And so it will open up a lot of conversations. And so when somebody decides that they want to do this, we'll sit down with them and we'll kind of figure out organically who is their target market, and how do we start to ask questions and determine what are the solutions for that target market. And then we start to go to work.
And you mentioned synthetics. For anybody who doesn't understand the difference, can you explain the difference between synthetic peptides, hormones, all that good stuff, and what Make does and how they come about creating their product?
Yeah, so let's just talk about peptides in general, okay? And this will also help educate you, because peptide is used a lot out there, okay? So a peptide is essentially a strand of amino acids. So you think about a bunch of amino acids and they have little bonds that hook them all together, right? Think of them like a key in a lock. There's many keys that will fit into a lock, but they won't necessarily turn it because they're not the right pattern. Okay, our peptides are the right pattern that cell signal and tell the cell to do something, an action that it otherwise wouldn't do. And so that's what a peptide is. Now, there's peptide fragments, which means they're just amino acids, but they're the key, but they're not the right key to turn the lock. And a lot of companies are utilizing that as a key word in order to sell their product. And they'll say, hey, we have peptides in our product, but they're peptide fragments, right? So that's the first thing, is peptide fragments. The second one is it cell signaling? For instance, there's billions of peptides in nature, but there's only 7,000 that will unlock our cells and tell them to do things. And so we've had to use AI to go out there and specifically look for ones that will specifically cell signal. Okay, so that's the difference between one that actually will cell signal or not. The last thing is synthetics versus natural. And so synthetics are man-made. They basically said, okay, what is the pattern that will cell signal this? Let's actually manufacture that. Okay, but what happens is they have to be, when they're synthetic, they have to be injected because the bonds are very weak. And so number one, you got to use a needle. You got to put that in you consistently. The second thing is, because most people don't want to do shots every day or even 2 times a day, depending on what the compound is, they've manipulated it so that it'll last a full week. And so if you look at like the GLP-1s are super popular right now. Those are weight loss. They were actually made, originally they were made for blood sugar issues, diabetics, that type of thing. And so they slow down the gut's absorption. Well, because they don't want to do a shot every single day, they've made the half-life, how long it lasts before it starts to break down, is 7 days. Well, that's 7 days that it's working consistently in your body, which sounds good, but it doesn't give your body the chance to rest. And so you have this thing called your circadian rhythm. Your body needs to create a signal, creates a chain reaction, and then it needs to rest and recover. And a lot of these synthetics are not allowing the body to rest and recover. And so then that's leading to side effects later on. Okay? And so our products, they cell signal, they last 40 seconds to 2 minutes. They create the cell signal, and then they allow the chain reaction, and then it goes into that rest and recover period. And so that's why our products you'll take on a daily basis. But again, they're all orals. They're made into drinks and that kind of stuff that tastes good. So people get into a habit of doing, like, for instance, we have a product called Fit, and you take it for breakfast. It tastes like a glass of orange juice every morning. So that starts to create a habit, which then 4X's your protein synthesis. Well, guess what? Then you're increasing your lean body mass, or at least maintaining it. And then that leads to other health benefits.
Why in the morning versus, let's say, the afternoon? Just for my own curiosity. And this will, kind of stem back to your bodybuilding background as well.
Yeah. So in this particular product, it's more about consistency day to day. So just creating a habit. The truth is, the longer you wait, the less your willpower is, right? Like you're always on it in the morning, and then by the end of the day, you're like, I really want those cookies or brownies or whatever it is, right? But also creating a habit, so as soon as you wake up, you take that so you don't forget, so it's consistently in you. Because again, it's only lasting for a short period of time. So for that specific one, it's not the timing of it; it's actually just the consistency,
the habit building, which, as we talked about before, and we know all too well, is really the building block for success, right? We're talking about aminos and peptides. The building block for success is consistency. And the earlier you can start, the more success you can find. So there's so many parallels between wellness and success and building a meaningful life. And Make has seemed to put all of these things in one with this new company that, Justin and you and so many of the great team members have created. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming on today, explaining the product and the opportunity with much clarity for the audience, and also being gracious enough to share your story. I can't wait till we meet in person. I know we've spoken quite a few times. Love each other's energy, and when the time is right, we'll definitely meet each other in person. So thank you, but I would also like for you to explain more about where the audience can find you and find out more about the Make Wellness product and how they could potentially come on board and start earning extra income while building a healthier, more fulfilling life themselves.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on Instagram, Nathan DeTracy. And as far as the link and them getting started, I think we're going to set one up within your website, right?
Yep, we'll have it.
Yep. So it'll be very simple. You can click on that. That will bring you into a full-on platform that you can walk through the products, and you can look at the video on the pay plan and the business. And here's what I would suggest is we have something called the Launch Box. It's all 7 products. It's an investment, it's $450, but what it's going to do is it's going to give you 30 days of a supply. And if you decide you want to do a business like this, you always want to try things out because you want a personal experience, right? And so we can work around, if that's not your budget, totally cool, we can work around that. But the people that if you look at the statistics show the people that start like that. In a business like this, I always say this, the speed of the leader determines the speed of the pack. So if you come into this and you say, hey, I want to be around successful people, the great thing about this is you're going to be around Sean, you're going to be around me. We're going to support you with other people that have the mindset to build wealth, regardless of what they're doing. So you're going to learn a lot with that. But then you take this vehicle that's already proven itself in the first year, and you start to add that on top of it. Success becomes inevitable as long as you're willing to show up.
Yeah.
Right. And so long story short, click the link that he'll have on his site. There'll be a join button on there, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, and I want to stress the importance of the supporting cast and the support system here. This isn't just about pushing product. This is about changing your life from the ground up. We see it now. I have to reiterate, more than ever, the security blanket that Americans and probably people all over the world have been raised to believe will keep them safe is more fragile and more fickle than ever. Within a few years, service-based jobs, robots, you name it, you are going to be replaced. And the only way to hedge against that is to start thinking like an entrepreneur, to start building something of your own. And Make Wellness has an opportunity for all to do so in a space that is going to be increasingly and just unequivocally popular, because people have the knowledge, they have the resources to live longer, healthier lives now. And you guys have found an awesome way to tap into that. So I just wanted to thank you one last time, Nathan. We'll have all of the information, including affiliate links and how you can find out more information about the Make product, in the bio for this episode. Thanks for tuning into the Real Mentors podcast. As always, let's get it.